concert of them working out the most efficient way of
Yeah.
making the burger as quickly as possible. And they like in an open parking lot, kind of to figure out where the fryer must be, where the burger station must be, who's putting the bun and the patty and this. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Jesus, that sounds so good. I'm gonna watch it now.
You
You
have
see,
to.
me now. There's more homework. So listen, Sia and I did something really interesting yesterday. I went round to Constitution Hill, which I did long ago when I was a law student, and we went to visit the Constitutional Court because it was the highest court in the land, and it had just been built, and it was a really exciting thing. I mean, I think Chaskelson was like still the Chief Justice, and there were people like Yvonne Mohoro and Justice Krichler and those sort of people on the bench. But I think they were in session on the day that we went there, so we couldn't even go into the chamber. So I got to see very little. And yesterday, Sia and Rena and I went to the Constitutional Hill precinct, the whole thing, and we got to see the fort. I mean, I've been to the women's prison as well. There was an event or two that we've done there, but
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it piecemeal. This time, I got to see the Flame of Democracy, the Constitutional Court, the old fort, the Mandela cell that they kept him in over there, and they're doing some incredible things there. There was a period for a couple of years in the last while where they actually did nothing because everything was put on hold, and people had other priorities. But they've got a trust there that's looking after Constitution Hill, and it's really incredible. I can only suggest to people that at some point this year in 2021, you need to get on over there because the Constitution is probably, we're always looking for things in South Africa that make us a nation. And I'm not a big patriot, and I'm not into nationalism because we've seen how much nationalism can do damage, right? But I think we have to have some common set of values. And if any single thing binds us together as a people, it has to be that constitution. Not for any other reason but that it was a negotiated way out of our very ugly and divided past into our collective future. And the people who put it together tried to create something that would last for hundreds of years, something which would give young, old, black, white, rich, poor, people from every ethnic and language group, abled and disabled, just everybody a chance to make this country theirs, and for the law to treat us all equally, and all of those things that, they're not even in the Constitution, they're in the preamble, which is pretty much carved in stone. And there's this magnificent tablet right in front of the Flame of Democracy that you need to go and see if you go to Constitution Hill. And the tablet has the entire preamble carved into it. And, there I was standing there thinking, this is about the closest we could get in South Africa to our Forum Romanum. The Roman Forum that everything in ancient Rome happened in that forum. Caesar was cremated there. The leaders would meet, speeches would be made. It was the center of the Roman universe. And when I saw that tablet there, I thought, if in 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 years, when no one will remember that Pumi or Sia or Gareth were ever there, they might dig up that tablet and they'll know what kind of a nation we were. And that would be good enough for me. I'd be proud of that. And it kind of hit me hard. It was a beautiful thing to do, and
Yeah.
I loved every second of being there. We saw some amazing things. Sia will tell you what he thought the highlight.
Incredible.
But I loved it, and I cannot recommend the place enough. I feel like an idiot for only having been able to see it properly for the first time in my life now at this advanced age.
And you can go and sit in on cases as well. If you look on their website, you'll see what's on the roll, and you can just go and sit in. A couple of years ago, Kaneko, Kaneko and I
Yes.
went to the Constitutional Hill. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, if nothing else, ne, My child will have lots of stories to tell when he's a grown up about crazy things his mom used to make him do.
No, but
Yes,
these are good things, man.
And
absolutely.
we were walking around just before going in, and you know who they were? They were hearing the case with Makate, with the Vodacom case.
Oh,
The
right. With
please,
there was the yeah
The please
the
call me
yes,
guy.
the please call me guy.
intellectual property was
Ah,
the purpose of that one. Yeah.
And before we walked in, Judge Skelson was out there. We actually bumped into him and we had a whole conversation with him. Later, when we went home, Kanaho was like, "So, what happened to that guy's arm, mommy? What happened to his arm and his eye?"
Don't you mean
uh,
LB
LB
Sack?
Sachs.
Albert Sachs, LB Sachs, LB
Yes.
Sachs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm explaining to Kanaho about letter bombs and
Mm.
assassins. And he said to me,
Where do you even begin?
Shoo, shoo, mommy, you know that assassin couldn't have been very good. Like, who sends a bomb in a letter?
Oh,
But I mean,
that's his takeaway.
it's a good observation. You know, it's very interesting. Like your son will never forget that story. First, having met the man, and second of all, having his own take on it. Because you know, there are a lot of kids learning about Batman and Spider-Man and Superman, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that story won't. If you ask him about LB Sachs today, he'll probably know about it. And this is the point, right? Is we should really spend a lot more of our time taking our kids, like you do, Pumi. This is an exemplary thing that you did, to go and see stuff like this. This is the
That's
stuff that actually matters.
that's important. That's part of history. That's right around us. It's open. It's free. I had been to Concord before. I'd been to the women's prison before. I'd done, I think, one tour around the prison itself, but I hadn't known so much of these stories that are just so woven into this place. Even just the story of the old fort there. And we went through like bunkers. It was really an unprecedented tour that we got to go through like these bunkers and these like alleyways and to see how there was like a lookout where, you know, there were guns just pointed out to protect. It's like, what? This happened.
in
Just
living memory, not long ago.
incredible, absolutely incredible that we still have this history that's so alive and rich around us.
And
Yeah, it
how's
was
that
incredible.
courtyard? How's that courtyard with the guns, with the holes where the prisoners used to come and be and in those holes would be like guns pointed at them as they like it was like rows of them. Just like, whoa, guys.
Well, I didn't realize how beautiful the view was from up there. I mean, it's called Constitution Hill because it's actually built on the highest point in Johannesburg. You can
Mm.
see a huge amount of Joburg from there. You've got this incredible view into Hillbrow, which, you know, it's like Hillbrow has got its own throbbing heartbeat. It's just an incredible place. Not the sort of place you should go into ill-advised, but it's definitely alive in ways that many other parts of our country are not. And then you've got the view of what would have been the gold mines, which is the reason the fort was built by Paul Kruger. And then, of course, it was used by successive. First, it was captured by the Boers. Then it was captured by the English. Then it was recaptured by the Boers. Then it was captured later on for a different purpose. I say captured in inverted commas, and used for political prisoners and all the stuff that happened during the Nationalist Party regime. And then eventually, you know, it's become kind of this museum. And when you walk around there, we don't have a lot of history in Johannesburg because it's only 100 years old. You know, Joburg's just over 100 years old, so it's not the oldest city in the world, but there's enough if you're prepared to look for it. It's
A
quite
lot's
cool.
gone on here. It's very
Yeah.
true.
It is cool. Anyway, Tracy says, my kids love museum, antique shops, and history. The antique shops in small Karoo towns are
Nice.
even better than museums. There's so much history there. That's a good point. But she does caution us. She says, you must be careful. The state of Robben Island is really poor at the moment. It's a sad, sad place, derelict, unkempt, and falling apart. I remember feeling that way about the Robert Sobukwe house, and we're about to do an episode on him for Blind History, which is
Yay.
yeah, and the story of Robert Sobukwe is probably in some ways more moving than many of the ones that we are told constantly by the ANC. Of course, Robert Sobukwe was not ANC; he was PAC,
PAC.
and therefore his story is often brushed under the carpet by the ANC because it's inconvenient that he was the hero that he was to them. And
last weekend was another anniversary of his passing, and
that's correct. That's
like
correct.
a ship in the night.
And it's funny, you know, when I think of Robben Island, and I was lucky enough to spend a night there. We actually, I did a show from there one morning, and we spent the night before there. And this was when I was still at 702, and we slept in the governor's house, and you could see Cape Town from the kind of situation, the site, the vantage point that the prisoners might have seen it for all those years. And the eerie silence of that place is just something else. But the single place on that island that moved me the most was Robert Sobukwe's little house. And I remember it was also in a state of disrepair, but that place is just, of all the places in there, and I saw Madiba's cell, and I saw the quarry, and I saw where they used to do their exercise in the yard, and they had a landing strip on Robben Island too, which is still there. And there's a lot about the island that's interesting. But that Robert Sobukwe house was the one place that really moved me. And I do wish that we had people running the Department of Arts and Culture, or whichever department it falls under. I suppose it's Public Works or whatever. But that really felt that instead of wasting the money on enriching themselves or doing things that will score them cheap political points now, that they would put that money in the right places, that they would help and train and look after and nurture young people's interest in history. Because I'm biased, obviously, and I'm a massive fan of history. So when I see this stuff not being looked after, it drives me crazy. The thing that's probably got me into more trouble than anything else when I go off on one of my rants on the show is when people destroy history, or they abandon an artifact, or something is stolen, or something is burnt down. Or to me, that's just the worst. And when I read stories like that in history, it just drives me crazy, because I think, what an irresponsible bunch of people were in that country at that time to let all of that go to waste. Terrible stuff. So I hope they sort it out. And that upsets me, Tracy, that you just spoilt my morning by telling me they're not looking after Robben Island. Tabiso says,
and you can never recover it. You can never get it back.
Yeah. By the way, what did you like about Conhill? What was your favorite thing?
It is, yeah, it's just what it means, and it represents to all of us still to this day. The first time I went there was because my mother actually took me here, a bit of a kanego situation.
Wow.
But my mother took me there, and she particularly took me to the women's prison. And to see it first through her eyes, and then I was like, well, this is pretty much a big deal. And I've subsequently been there. My family is predominantly with so many women. And we go there, and there's a bit of a courtyard first before you actually walk into the women's prison. And there all of these women's names out on this massive piece of marble. And that is my first and cherished memory of that place. To go, it is because of people like, my mother's predecessors or my sister's predecessors, and so many other men who also did so much, that we're here today, that we're standing. So yeah, it's everything collectively for me, and the reminder of it. It's crazy. It's not lost on me. It's not.
No, we really have to preserve these places, and I think that what they're doing up at Conhill is just so important. So if you get a chance, please go and see it. It'll be one of the best things you can do. And if you've got kids, do what Pumi and Sia's mom did, and take them up there, because they'll love it. even if they just go to see the fort and prison cells and all of that stuff, because it is really exciting. I mean, it's like it's our own kind of Disney World, except it has substance.
But it's also buzzing, and there are things happening there, and kudos as
well. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but why I say Disney World is it's like this fort, and there are slits that the guns would have pointed out at, and they can climb up these old stone stairs, and the fort has got these big thick walls, and if a kid has imagination, this is the kind of stuff that activates that. That's what I mean by Disney World. I don't mean anything disrespectful.
But mentioning the unfortunate state of Robben Island, given the message we received this morning, it was also refreshing, and the reason why we were there is because of so much that is currently underway at Conhill, and that's because of a great group of people who have banded together to really ensure that the standard of what Conhill stands and remains. So it was great to see people invested and working on different ideas and creative things. And I marveled at how they go about it as well. So, for example, there's some things that are done inside some old cells or some, just some of the rooms and spaces there, but how they're able to work in those places, but there are certain rules, like you cannot drill into a wall. You can't knock down any walls. So they're really respectful in how they go about that, so that we still have the structures as they were. It's a lot of work, but it's fascinating.
That's incredible.
And isn't it inspiring to be around people who just love what it is that they do, who care about it and want it to be the best. Outside of all of the shit that we hear, outside of all of the money that is stolen, the politicians that suck, here is a group of people dedicated to what they do. To what they do and the job they have at hand, without like all the fanfare and the fuss and needing to be known and acknowledged and drive Porsches and Lamborghinis, and you know what I'm saying? They just
that's so true. That's exactly right, because that stuff is just so unimportant. When you see these people who are doing this stuff because they love it and they care about it, it just changes everything. So absolutely 100% right. All right, so a few things that we need to do this morning. First things first, Pumi says she's dressed up. We're on YouTube this morning. She put on her pink lipstick for us for YouTube, and you can watch us live. You don't just have to listen. I mean, I caution.
Colored dress.
Very nice. I caution you against watching me, and Sia usually looks smart, but if you want to punish yourself and actually see me instead of just hearing the show, then you're welcome to do so, but at your own risk. Okay, that's all I'm going to say.
No.
If you've been paying attention to us for all these years and you still think it would be a good idea to watch me rather than to just hear me, be that at your own risk. That's all I'm going to say. But you can join us anytime.
Yes, I am officially now a YouTuber.
Yes,
I
that's
must
right.
remember to tell this to my child. I must remember to tell my child this. He is going to be so jealous.
That's right. Someone said this to me in a meeting at the office the other day, and I was like, uh-oh. Don't know if there it is.
Are we content creators now?
We are YouTube content creators. Yeah. Whether we like
I'm going to change my bio on social media, and I'm going to start every show with, hey guys, welcome to my channel.
Hey guys.
Watch our channel, subscribe to our channel. But I would like you to subscribe, because that's how we measure whether or not it's working and whether or not it's successful. And if it's not worth doing, then we'll just go back to doing the podcasts, because the numbers there are really significant. And I don't want to do a boring show. I don't want to do something for like a couple of thousand people. If it's a couple of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, sure.
But don't worry. Tune in tomorrow. We'll be doing a beauty and makeup tutorial.
Is that what we're doing? Oh, okay.
Yes.
I've just remembered I've got things tomorrow. I won't be here then for that.
Why wasn't I invited for the makeup tutorial?
Yes, we'll do that tomorrow, and then on Friday we'll do an unboxing and review of a new device.
Have you ever watched those things, the unboxings?
You could get lost in them, yo. You could get
Now,
lost in
Really?
them.
yeah, I have to say that if
Oh,
there's something that I really want, you get a bit of a kick out of someone else opening that up. I know it sounds
oh.
ridiculous, and if you've never done it before, you probably think we're insane. But am I right, Pumi? Like, there's
It's
something
like a
about it.
screensaver. It's like, you know how you can
Yeah.
get like sucked into a screensaver? The
Yes,
unboxing videos they can be
yes,
so soothing and so satisfying all at the same time, and just
big time.
mindless like watching of the packaging and the oh come on, Sia.
Nope.
Great.
I thankfully I've never fallen into that trap. No,
You could
that's
get
never been
lost.
my YouTube thing.
Well, one of the other things that we'll do this morning is we will check in with Sean Sanders. There's a lot to discuss. I noticed that Bitcoin is back up to hovering around $50,000. I always mention the price because, that drives interest. And I think a lot of people are only interested if they know that there's money to be made. And let me tell you something. If you bought when it was down at $42,000 or $43,000 earlier this week, you are happy you did. And for those people who who bought like when it was $50,000, you're not quite as thrilled. But we'll get an update with Sean Sanders later on and Revix. That's all coming right up. All right. Quick email before we get to the headlines this morning. This is from Liesel. She says, "Hey, Gareth and gang. Just wanted to say well done on an awesome show. Been listening to you since last year and watched the YouTube stream for the first time this morning. Oh, gosh, what a treat. Those Word, Excel, and sneezing shenanigans had me in stitches all day. Keep doing whatever you're doing. And to Sia, I don't have children, but man, you seem like a fun child to have. You see, Sia, people still think you're a child. What a bonus for you."
I think it's a great thing for people
Yeah.
to think that.
Yes. But you seem like a fun child to have, even though you shat your pants. We had to bring that in.
Oh,
With that said, how about doing a kiss and tell show every now and then where your audience can ask questions about anything they want? Life experiences, dark secrets, pet peeves, embarrassing moments, dates that went wrong, worst jobs. Hell. Let me tell you something, Liesel. That's pretty much the whole show every day.
yes.
I don't know how to put this to you. If you've only been listening for the year, maybe we've been operating at less than our usual frequency. But Pumi will vouch for me on this, having been part of our lives for Pum's, 20 years I've known you. That's what the show is. All we do is talk about embarrassing stuff. That's pretty much the whole show. So if you want more, I'll try and get more going. That's all I can promise.
I don't know where we'll get that more, Gareth. Liesel, you know that I just did a what in my buns once before. I can never run for political office ever, even if I wanted to, because of that confession. So I don't know what more you want from us, Liesel.
Yeah, none of us can ever run. And thank God, what a privilege it is that we won't have to run for political office. None of us want to.
You never know how power hungry we might get in the future.
No, I can pretty much guarantee Pumi, Sia, Gareth, we're not running for political office.
No. I might run strategy.
Yes, sure. No, we could be the power behind the throne type people one day, especially when we're old. But I don't think with all the things we've said, Pumi, about politicians, I don't think they'd want us around them. They would think of us as the enemy.
No.
Good point.
You don't think so?
No. I think that what they actually need is they need to be given a run for their money. They need to be given a run for their money, kept on their bloody toes. and we can do that. We can do that. We can be the
But
people
we've got to
that
do it
keep
from
them
here. It's better to do it from here. I mean, I don't want to be part of their world. To quote Aladdin, part of your world. That's not where I want to be. Okay, I'm not Aladdin. That's the Little Mermaid. All right, so many things to talk about. Tabiso says, "Pardon my language. I'm a musicologist, and stuff like that just upset me." So he means, the opera house or theater that he says your effing government has now turned into a parking lot in Pretoria, under the Department of Education. They're on the corner of Bosman and Pretorius. It's basically in Church Square. Instead of restoring it, I bet some fat-bellied F now has groceries or a Walkman. Yeah, Tubby. So look, if you're a musicologist and you're into music and you see great buildings that were built for their acoustics and for performances and for artistic expression, And listen, the apartheid government didn't do a lot of that, so there are only a few because they were not artistic, and most of their architecture was so revolting that I'd be happy to see any of it go. But I agree with you. There are these facilities. We have great buildings in this country that are, in structural terms, amazing and could be used by creative and talented young South Africans to develop their skills, and instead they just left to rack and ruin and, as you say, parking lots, which is very disappointing. We have the stuff. It's not as if this wasn't there. We had it and then we let it go to ruin. And I do blame, again, the politicians, the people we don't want to be. Anyway, all right, let's get to some headlines. Are you ready for that, Pumi? Let's see what we've got here. Home Affairs.
Oh no.
Home Affairs had to explain themselves. Aaron Motsoaledi said that the department would defend its decision to block Atul Gupta's attempt to have a South African passport issued. Speaking at a media briefing in Pretoria on Wednesday, Motsoaledi said that the department remained firm in its decision to deny the issuing of the Gupta brothers' new South African passport. I don't see why we shouldn't give them a passport, if only because it means they'd come here and then we could arrest them. Or is that a stupid idea?
I don't think it's because they want to come here. I think it's because they want to use it to gallivant around the world, and they can't get it from their home country.
I see. Okay, well, Motsoaledi said that even though last month it emerged the Guptas had approached the High Court in Pretoria to compel the department to issue them with a passport, and the controversial family fled South Africa to Dubai as criminal allegations mounted against them. It is amazing to me when I close my eyes and go to sleep at night, it just beggars belief that you could steal billions, not just thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions like you and I might if we robbed a bank, but billions. And then all you have to do is go to Dubai and spend some of those billions to buy yourself a nice luxurious lifestyle. And no one can touch you.
Of course.
Incredible, right?
You don't need to be stealing billions. Speaking of Home Affairs, they're still investigating how Bushiri left the country. And he's just millions. And he's still broadcasting. He's a YouTuber. Every Wednesday he's still broadcasting on YouTube and asking people to keep paying their tithes into his net bank account.
And I'll say again, where is Marcus Jooste? It seems like if you steal enough, you get past the authorities. But if you steal a little bit, you go to jail. Like
Ask
ordinary
Hamilton
people.
No. Ask Hamilton Dove.
So that's going on. They're not going to get their passports, according to Motsoaledi. And then, speaking of ministers, Ayanda Dlodlo said she was yet to see any concrete evidence of intelligence agents trying to bribe judges. She told Parliament that information to this effect was given to the State Security Agency by a discredited information peddler. Dlodlo was answering questions in Parliament on Wednesday about allegations aired at the state capture inquiry that members of the judiciary had received payments in Operation codenamed Project Justice. The minister said there was no evidence and that the operation was probably not carried out. What do you think of that?
So what's not in that report, which is even more galling if you ask me, is the fact that she also stood up and said the DG went and appeared at the commission without first conferring with her, without her kind of approving it. I was just like, yo, you don't have to approve it. It's like,
No.
how power hungry? What was she going to say? Don't go there.
How did these guys figure this? I mean,
she was so angry. One of the things she was very angry about is that he went without having first conferred with her. And she stood up in Parliament to say this. And not a single person was just like, hey, slow your roll, sister. Slow your roll.
Rwanda is the first African nation to get the Pfizer biotech vaccine. Apparently, they have got 103,000 doses of the vaccine in the capital Kigali through the UN-led COVAX initiative, which aims to provide equitable access to COVID-19 jabs for poorer countries. Again, Rwanda, whether you love or hate them, and we had JJ Cornish on the other day to say how not necessarily kosher, Paul Kagame is, but certainly he gets things done. You know, at least they are starting to get their COVID vaccines, which is more than I can say for many other countries on this continent. I do have to just drop this in. Yesterday, Bladen Simande and Zweli Mkhize had something really interesting to say, and I don't think a lot of people have been paying attention to this because it didn't get massive news coverage. It certainly didn't go onto social media, and I wonder why. So it turns out if you've had this new variation, the new COVID variation, the second wave, as it was called, you're pretty much immune. They've done the tests, and this is excellent news. So what I would say is, based on, and this was a joint statement by the Minister of Higher Education and the Minister of Health that says, listen, if you've had the second strain of coronavirus, the South African variant, as they call it, you can pretty much go back to living your normal life because you can't pass it on and you're pretty much immune to all the strains. If that's the case, you don't need any of this stuff. I mean, they didn't say this, but they should, because it's true. And I'd like a doctor to explain to me why it isn't true if they know better than me. But from their own statements, these are two ministers in our government, they said this pretty much immunizes you and means you can take off the mask. You don't have to worry about it. If this is true, though, but for me, we could, if we've had this, because you can't infect.
The mask is proving to have a whole lot of other benefits. Like, don't take off the mask, yo. Just keep your mask on. Just don't sneeze and breathe on us in public. I'm a fan of the mask. I am a fan of the mask, y'all. Like, I have not had a flu. Neither has my child.
I know, but for me, listen, I hear you. It also helps not having people breathing right on you and social, all that stuff. But those are things that you can. Those have got to be optional. Those are not things that you can compel and mandate people to do. And frankly, if I can't take off my mask, I don't see any reason to get the vaccine. I don't see any unless I can go back to some semblance of normality where I don't have to walk around with this thing on my face the whole time. Unless that happens, I'm not participating in anything else. Either the vaccine allows me to reclaim my life in every which way, including international travel, or why bother with the vaccine?
Let's see. Texas has just gone maskless.
That's right.
And let's see how that works for them. They'll be our little test study.
Litmus test.
Here's an interesting story and something we can pick up with Jean-Jacques the next time he's on. President Emmanuel Macron has admitted for the first time that French soldiers murdered a top Algerian independence figure and then covered up his death in the latest acknowledgement by Paris of its colonial-era crimes. Macron met with 4 of the grandchildren of Ali Boumengel and admitted in the name of France that the lawyer had been detained, tortured, and killed in Algiers in 1957. It's a long time ago, hey? I mean, those children and grandchildren, they must, from 1957, this guy was killed. That's a fair amount of time that's elapsed that the French had to tell the truth, and they've waited all these years. French authorities had previously claimed that he had committed suicide. Doesn't that sound familiar, Steve Biko? While in detention, a lie that his widow campaigned to be overturned up to her death in August last year. I mean, how unfortunate that she had to die just before this admission.
Been fighting this for years.
Can you imagine? Anyway. So the French have finally come through with the truth on that, and about time. Also, bowing to pressure, Angela Merkel has eased her virus curbs. See, people are just getting sick and tired of all these rules now, and they will start rebelling. I've said this for the longest time. After more than 9 hours of talks, Merkel and Germany's 16 regional leaders unveiled a step-by-step plan to relax restrictions after months of shutdowns, despite concern over the spread of new and more aggressive variants. She said that they're going to get Europe's top economy back up and running, caving to political pressure and public discontent 7 months before a general election. Oh, there it is. That's why they're doing
That's
a
the
general election. You see, politicians behave very differently when there's an election on the way.
Of course, that's why we're on level 1. What? So people can campaign for later on this year.
Correct. There we go. Quite. All right.
6 months of campaigning coming your way.
Yeah,
whether we like it or not.
100%. Okay, so a couple of messages quickly. Carl says we all need to install that Crisp with a K app that Rich Mulholland was talking about yesterday, because it cuts out background noise. And Carl says he can hear someone making breakfast. And it must be
Carl,
Conejo,
I'm
right?
sorry, it's my child. Children, this is the thing about children. They have to eat 3 times a day. It's quite irritating, actually.
You're lucky if it's 3 times a day.
Yeah, because they're at school. That's why it's only 3 times. When they were like lockdown, it was every 2 hours. But I'm sorry, Carl. I tried to mute, and it just he just my trigger figure wasn't as quick. Sorry.
Well, I made notes while Rich was talking to us yesterday, and I'm going to try out some of that stuff today. I had to leave straight after the show yesterday to do our Con Hill visit, but I'll be checking in
some tricks there.
Yeah, Crisp, not CRISPR. CRISPR is the gene editing software. That's not going to, unless you've got a laboratory with live specimens. I don't know how that's going to help you. Crisp with a K.
Gene editing.
Dogozo says, I understand why the mask is necessary right now, but I'm not a fan. I cannot wait until the day we do not have to walk around wearing masks. I'm with you, Dogozo. Okay, it's time. And I think a lot of us look forward to this every week, where we get to check in with Sean Sanders. And yet another week where there is plenty to talk about. Has it ever happened that we just go, oh, Sean, just give us a normal old update. There's nothing really happening. There's nothing really to talk about. Not a single time, never. Revix, REVIX, is a fantastic place where you could allow yourself and experiment with a diversified portfolio of the world's top cryptocurrencies. It automatically stays up to date with the ever-changing market and rebalances itself regularly. You can sign up for free to Revix. Just follow them on social media at REVIX Invest, at Revix Invest. You can also verify your ID, add funds, select the bundle of your choice, and play the game. So, Sean, what's happening, man?
Good morning, Gareth and team. Yeah, it's been another weird, crazy, fun week in the world of crypto. I can't even, I'm pinching myself every morning just with sort of the growth that we're going through. I mean, it's been just quite remarkable to sort of see the mainstream adoption of crypto happen this quickly. And I suppose, you're seeing all the mainstream media, outlets coming around to this now and going, oh, help, we have to actually report about this.
Yeah.
And that's also led to a bigger surge in sort of marketing in the space.
Well, I've noticed that there are even some media houses that are now reporting the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum, just like they do the gold price, as a regular thing. And that was something unheard of when we started doing it. We used to give the Bitcoin price every morning, and I still do it regularly, especially if I know you're going to be on. But there are still places that are pretending that it doesn't exist. Now, can you explain a couple of things to me? I've got my own agenda for this morning. There are so many of these altcoins, right? There's so many of these new coins that come out. Are people just creating them and they are empty vessels, or are many of them being designed for a specific purpose and people are buying into them because of what their applications might be? I don't understand that. Can you maybe explain that to idiots like me in the simplest language?
Sure. So, I mean, altcoins are created on a daily basis. There's actually at the moment about 8,200 cryptocurrencies. So you have to sort of think about the altcoins very much like startups, right? At some point in time, Google, Facebook, et cetera, these were all startup companies. Just like, once upon a time, Bitcoin was worth $0.01. Ethereum was a cryptocurrency worth absolutely nothing. So I guess a lot of people are actually speculating and looking at white papers, which is sort of like the research brief about what exactly these cryptocurrencies are looking to do. And they're trying to get the next big win. And it is very much like a gambling-esque approach. I mean, a lot of people would actually look at venture capital, which is the whole entire industry of investing in startups, and say that that's a bit of a gambling industry, right? I mean, it's just sort of where along the spectrum are you really sitting? Because when you're investing in stocks, you're also just making a calculated bet. It's just, it's a slightly different sort of approach to maybe investing in high-risk startups.
Well, they are startups, but they're also a great place for you to make a lot of money very quickly because, I mean, that's where you get the 100,000 times increases overnight. And I mean, people have made huge fortunes just on the alt coins market, but you have to really know what you're doing because you can also lose money.
Oh, most certainly. So if you look at, say, Cardano, which has grown about 2,600% this last year, I mean, it's outperformed Ethereum, outperformed Bitcoin, it's outperformed both of them put together. It's sort of just having that in your portfolio, even if it's a small allocation in your portfolio that really has a big impact. I think a lot of people try and they pick these cryptocurrencies that are absolutely nowhere. They're like in the top 200 or the top 500, and they're meant to change the world in some way, shape, or form. I cannot advocate for that. Obviously, I can't provide financial advice, but that seems like a silly strategy to me. If you look at Revix and what we do, we actually look at the altcoins that are still pretty big. I mean, we don't look at a single cryptocurrency that's less than about $3.5 billion with a B billion dollars worth of value. And what that really means is that there's an active market behind it, and they're generally doing something quite interesting, right? So, I mean, most cryptocurrencies within the top 10 are now sitting over about $4 billion. If you then start venturing out to about the top 20, you're looking at still over $1 billion, over $2 billion actually. And I think you'll have to look at sort of those bigger projects because the space is incredibly volatile. I mean, you can see cryptocurrencies move on a daily basis of between, I think on average is about 3.5%, all the way up to 40% some days, right? And that is gut-wrenching stuff, right? It doesn't matter if you come from a professional world of trading or you are an everyday investor, you have to really be in for that ride. And looking at sort of the bigger cryptocurrencies, you're not seeing then the 200 or 300% moves in one day, just like you're not seeing maybe the 99% drop in one day. So that's why we sort of advocate for the top 10 at least.
So just tell us quickly, because I know just Bitcoin, and we always talk about Bitcoin price because it's kind of the dipstick test for most people of when they might want to get involved or when they might want to know more. It went all over the place this week. It almost dropped a fifth of its value at some point and then climbed right back up.
Yeah, so it went to a record high of about $57,000. This is now not this last week. This was about 2 weeks back. It then sharply pulled back and pulled back all the way through to about $42,000. I mean, that's a huge drop, right? That is about a 19.5% drop. And then there was a big kind of swell of investors that moved into the space, pushing it back up about 15%. So now it's sitting at what, about $49,300. Yesterday it was at $51,000. You still have a very bullish market, right? There's still a lot of people. I mean, I can tell you personally at Revix, there's still a lot of people signing up. It's the first time they're making a crypto purchase. There's still billionaires coming in every single day saying that they're allocating a little bit of their money to crypto. It's institutions. We've never received so much institutional interest ever. And we're having to actually look at setting up funds in Luxembourg or in the UK and whatnot to actually facilitate investments of $10 million plus, which is really great. I mean, fantastic problem to have. But this is unheard of 2 or 3 years ago.
Just to give people who might be thinking about exactly that, the opportunity to start from scratch, how hard is it to join up with Revix? I gave a basic précis. I said you sign up, you just provide proof of your ID, and then you can add some money. It doesn't have to be a lot of money, but it can be. And you then have all these options. So just talk us through it as briefly as possible, like, the elevator pitch of how quick it is and easy it is to get into Revix.
So there's no easier platform really, right? So you just go to www.revix.com, you open an account, that'll take you about 30 to 45 seconds, depending how fast you type. From there, you would need to verify your account. You would need to send through a proof of address, and you'll need to send through a proof of identification. We're then going to send you a little SMS. You're going to have to take a photo of your ID and take a selfie. We want to see how good looking you are. At the same time, we want to be able to compare your face to your ID document. Just a joke on how good looking you would be, obviously.
Sia is only going to sign up so you can evaluate how good looking he is. He's
this is a lot of work, Sean. Now, what filter do I use? What background? Do you want a sunset? Do you want the beach? Too much.
Unfortunately, actually, we don't get to see any selfies. This is going through to our verification partners. They're based in the US. So they kind of just say, yes, this person's not a terrorist, and yes, this person's not a criminal. You can accept them as a customer. That doesn't take long. The selfie is actually the easiest part. Maybe for you, it'll be a little bit more difficult, but without the selfie backdrop, I think it should be
fine. Because people might be nervous about handing over ID information. The reason you have to do that is because you're dealing with money, and there are rules all over the world about where money comes from. Even in the world of cryptocurrency, you can't take dodgy money if you know it's dodgy. And similarly, people can't be sending illicit money in different directions that includes you. Is that more or less correct, or is it also to verify that you're the owner of that Bitcoin once you bought it?
So it's actually all three reasons, and the third reason that comes into this, the first two that you've mentioned, and then the third one is that if you get locked out of your account or somebody tries to hack your account, we need to be able to say, hey, listen, somebody's doing this. Like, can we verify that you are the one accessing this account? So that's ID documents, that's potentially sending you a selfie again with a different backdrop. So it's these security measures which sort of, it's a differentiator for us versus other platforms as well. So we need to be able to protect you over the long term. Regulators seem to be failing at doing this. Hopefully in the near future, they'll be able to actually step up. But anyway, that's actually all a really quick process. That takes roughly about a minute to do once you've actually signed up for an account. From there, we generally take about 3 to 4 hours to verify the account. That's sending off the information to our international partner and whatnot. That's obviously all done on your behalf. And then from there, you make a deposit from your bank. It's really that simple. You make a 500 Rand minimum deposit. It can go up to 2 million if you're really feeling gutsy in this market. And you can invest with us. Then every single month, if you invest with in one of our bundles will automatically update. And this is something that's quite interesting. And again, it's a big differentiator versus other platforms out there. Because if you go and you just bet in the likes of Bitcoin, and I say bet deliberately, but if you just buy Bitcoin or Ethereum or Litecoin or just one of these other cryptocurrencies out there, this market is volatile, right? You could have picked like a Ripple. We spoke about that on the show a few weeks ago. It declines 50, 60, 70% in value. And that is really the reason why you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right? So for us, diversify across the crypto space. It'll update every single month to include cryptocurrencies that increase in value, remove the cryptocurrencies that decline in value just automatically, and you'll stay invested hopefully over a long period of time. And that's sort of our long-term goal. We're long-term greedy. We want you to be a customer of ours over a 5, 10, 15-year horizon.
Beautiful. All right, Sean, I'm afraid that's all we got time for this morning, but thanks again for the updates. And we will be watching these prices every day with great interest, because many of us are now, and we all have a dog in the fight thanks to Revix. And you can find out more by going to revix.com. That's Sean Sanders, the founder of Revix, and we'll check in with him again shortly. Thank you so much.
Cheers, guys. Have a great one. Speak soon.
Sean, cheers, man. Awesome. There we go. Very, very good. It is, what is it? It's a Thursday morning. It's already the 4th of March. Unbelievable. Many things to get into in the next hour. It's the Burning Platform, which of course is brought to you by Nando's. We're going to find out what is happening in the world and talk with Pumi and our special guest about some of the things that you need to know about, so that if it comes up with friends, family, with work colleagues, if it comes up in some kind of high-level intellectual conversation you find yourself in, God knows where you find those anymore. But if it does, then
Since there's no water cooler. There's no water cooler at the office.
Exactly, and that's where all the important conversations happen. Sia, don't you know this?
Conversations at the socially distanced shopping queue happen like, oh, so that's what you can share.
Oh, come on.
Level 1, y'all can have dinner parties.
I just want to, bring this. I saw this video, and it's so apt because we were talking to Rich Mulholland yesterday. Ironically, my video wasn't working while we were talking to Rich about how you can better use video conferencing. It was so stupid. My camera just cut out. Anyway, there was a California doctor. I actually saw the clip, who was meant to appear before a judge, right? There was a court session. And this California doctor joined the Zoom court while he was operating on a patient. And the judge had a complete meltdown. The judge was like, what are you doing? Yeah, you can't do this while you're operating. Rather concentrate on your patient and we'll reschedule the court date. I don't know.
That's exactly what he was.
Do you think he did that purpose?
Manipulative.
Well, I mean, he was just appearing in court for some traffic hearing, so it's not as if he committed murder. Not to condone what he did, but I think the audacity to do this. His name is Scott Green, Dr. Scott Green, and he appeared over Zoom while appearing to be mid-operation. The judge called him out and he said, oh no, actually this is really fine. It's a simple surgery. And I'll also have another surgeon right here who's doing the surgery with me. But imagine if you are the person who's being operated on,
or then the table.
Or then the family who's outside, you're there, you're panicked, you're just waiting, crossing fingers that the surgery goes well. And then you find out that the surgeon was busy on Zoom. Come on.
Just goes to show how seriously they take your health, these people.
I don't care how simple it could be, even if it is my dentist, just, I don't know, brushing my teeth themselves. I want you fully focused.
Yeah, you want them to be attentive. No, I agree with that.
Busy on Zoom.
It was funny to watch because the doctor was like, yeah, so what? Let's carry on. It's no problem. Let's get on with it.
It's just another day in his life.
Correct. So that was happening. I saw Elon Musk's mother, May, who we discussed on the show the other day. She posted a letter. This is very cute, from the University of Pretoria years ago. Let me read it to you. This is actually really cool. So Elon Musk's mother put this up on social media. It's from the University of Pretoria on the 17th of May, 1989, Sia. And it says, to whom it may concern, Elon Musk, computer aptitude tests. I've requested IBM South Africa to conduct aptitude tests on Elon Musk regarding computer programming, etc. The results were outstanding, i.e., operating A+, programming A+. Faithfully yours, JLM Vickers, Director Information Management at the University of Pretoria. So Elon's mom put that up and said, hashtag proud mom. I suppose this proves that you were always going to do well. That's really cute,
sweet.
don't you think?
Yeah.
Very cute.
Yeah, the foundation was already there then at that stage.
I hope she gets more than breakfast for Mother's Day.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure she has.
I
I'm pretty
think
sure she has.
She's okay. And listen, she's not exactly a slouch in her own right. I mean, she's not just sitting there hoping her children will give her money. She's done very, very well herself. She's a go-getter.
And then completing the circle of this part one conversation, Mr. George Foreman is alive and well.
Oh, thank God. Okay.
He is 72 years old
Wow.
and very active on the Twitter.
Is he?
He's tweeting it up.
Why
What
is
is
he
he
not
called?
following George Foreman on Twitter? Just let me correct that.
Don't need to.
Let me correct that right this minute.
What are you going to follow? Okay, sure, you don't.
Listen
Let me
here.
not dictate.
The old people out here keep delivering content, okay? Keep delivering content. Whether it's Dolly Parton tweeting a
Yes.
picture of herself getting vaccinated with a caption that says, Dolly getting a bit of her own medicine.
Oh. You know, the picture is one thing. I saw a clip of her singing. So she redid Jolene and she said, vaccine, 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 vaccine. And I thought, yes, Dolly, yes.
Auntie Dion Warwick. I mean, the old people are out here delivering content. My other favorite is O.J. Simpson. When he starts every little video on Twitter with, hey, Twitter world.
Yeah, what I hate about that, I spoke about it briefly last week, is like these three complete assholes, O.J. Simpson, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Gary Glitter. All three of them disgraceful human beings. All three have been vaccinated. So don't worry, everybody. Coronavirus might take you out, might take out members of your family who are advanced in age or have diabetes or whatever. But those three will be fine. Government has decided to vaccinate them in the US. How nice.
Hey, Twitter world.
Hey, Twitter world. It's the juice. It's the juice.
Yours truly.
He's got a mask on that says the juice, as if he needs more attention.
He's such a crazy creep.
All right,
So
we'll be
George
back with the
Foreman
burning
then.
platform.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be back with the burning platform next.
Do you grunt when getting out of the car? Creak when getting out of bed? Do you walk into a room and forget why? Are you having trouble in the sack? Is the hump in a slump? Join me, Chris Avon-Smith, and Dr. Mark on the T Health Show every Wednesday morning, 9 a.m. where we talk to medical and allied professionals about those serious and not so serious medical lifestyle issues. The T Health Show, sponsored by the T Clinic. The T Health Show is available on podcasts. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
Just because it's about technology, connecting your business to the rest of the world doesn't mean you need to send rockets to space and use complicated solutions. Want to simplicate things? Well, join Jaco Voigt, CEO of Catalytic on the Unbundled podcast. With skin in the game and a keen focus on educating and assisting you and your business, Jaco decodes all the aspects of connectivity, security, and cloud solutions. Unbundled is brought to you by Catalytic. It is available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The world's apex predators have fearsome reputation, so it's hard to believe that some of them are facing a fight for survival.
Conspire and Falsebear watch almost completely disappeared.
Blind Conservation is the story of these endangered predators. In our first episode, we speak to global experts about the alarming plight of the great white shark.
Each shark that lives out there, one day out of 4 days, it can be killed.
And what you can do to help one of nature's most magnificent creatures survive for future generations. Join me, Spike Valentine, and my co-host, Anthony Medera, for Blind Conservation, available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
We live in a rapidly changing world, but how we get paid remains stubbornly updated.
We have this archaic cycle.
The future of pay is a podcast series that explores the impact that the current salary status quo has on South Africans.
When you are desperate, you will do anything to get that money to put food on your table for your family by tomorrow evening.
And how innovative startup SmartWage is looking to change that.
There's some problem here. People are waiting to get paid. And the impact is that they can't afford expenses that come up in the middle of the month.
The future of pay, brought to you by SmartWage, available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, welcome to cliffcentral.com on this Thursday morning. We are about to launch into the Burning Platform, which is brought to you by Nando's. It's already your one-stop shop to pick up on current affairs and to talk through some of the issues that everybody is talking about, that everybody's interested, and hopefully we will touch on the ones that you care about most this morning. If you've got any suggestions, if there's anything that you want us to cover, you're allowed to. You're allowed, of course. You're allowed. I need to make because people need permission these days for everything. You need permission to go to the shops. You need permission to wear certain footwear. So today, I'm going to give you permission to direct the conversation in any way you see fit. You can do that by sending us your questions or your comments or anything you want to throw into the conversation. You can do it by contacting us on 079-748-2090. That's our WhatsApp line, 079-748-2090. You can join us on the Webinar Jam link or on YouTube by clicking on those links from cliffcentral.com. You can subscribe to our YouTube, and you'll be able to give us just about any tip you'd like about what you think needs covering in the Burning Platform. So this morning, it is me and Pumi, and we're going to be joined in a moment or two by Daniel Silk, who is one of South Africa's leading political and economic analysts and a passionate keynote speaker. He blends the economic and political trends in an accessible and insightful way. We've had him on before, and I'm very excited to have him on today again. He's a director of the Political Futures Consultancy, which is based in Cape Town and serves as the host of major global blue chip companies with outstanding keynotes, webinars, and workshops aimed at helping people understand what is happening in South Africa. So Daniel will join us in just a moment. Pumi, are you ready for another week? Yeah. Get going. We have so many things to talk about this morning. So while we're waiting for Daniel to join us, have you been watching your Zondo commission like you always do?
Unfortunately, and this has been quite a week, hey, unfortunately, I have had to, like I was telling you earlier, that I'm moving offices, right? So I have spent huge chunks of my day signing forms for Telkom, signing forms, huge chunks of my day, which have taken away from my like Zondo Commission watching, my days of Zondo. It's so devastating for me. I missed.
If you aren't watching the Zondo Commission, how the hell am I going to get my information on it?
Dude, and who did I miss? I missed Matsela Koko and Brian Molefe. Brian Molefe.
Been a busy week. Well, let's welcome Daniel. Daniel, it's a great pleasure to see you. I was just introducing you by your excellent CV, and it's not as if you're a stranger to the show anyway, but a lot of people very excited to have you on. So there's stuff to talk about this morning, and I just spoke to Pumi about the Zondo Commission and what was happening there, and she, even though Pumi is a diehard fan of the State Capture Commission, and she's my only eyes and ears on the commission, she said that this week she didn't have a chance to do it. Have you been watching the commission?
Yeah, hi Gareth and hi Pumi. Yes, good to be with you, by the way. Yes, I have been watching the commission on and off. It's a full-time job to watch the commission in South Africa, so you have to slot it in among other activities. But it's been, it's a really necessary exercise for the country, and I hope that the financial aspects don't creep into curtailing what is a critically important process for us.
So, listen, I saw a little bit of Koko lying to the commission about precisely who owned a certain email address and how certain members of the board were able to access this information through this email address. He was denying it, but they suspected it may have been Salim Essa who was in charge of that. Essa, of course, being a henchman of the Guptas. And it was mostly about Tegeta and how Tegeta, the coal mine, was given this preferential contract to deal with Eskom. Of course, they say Glencore was about to go under and Eskom was pressured into saving Glencore because Cyril was there. Basically, it's all so ugly because it appears to the casual observer that it is impossible to do business at a high level like that in South Africa without the grubby hands of politicians being involved at almost every level. And this, if anything else, whether it's Koko being the bad guy or Essa being the bad guy or Jacob Zuma being the bad guy or the Guptas themselves, it doesn't seem to matter to me, because what this has revealed is just how fraudulent and corrupt the supposed ordinary business of coal mining. You'd think something as filthy as coal mining would attract people who were just interested in making a profit, but clearly it's all very, very much intermingled with the ugly politics of this country. It made me quite depressed. Yeah, look, depressed indeed, and I think you're right in saying that we've had a tainted state now for any number of years, and the tainting of the state really is not just related to the Guptas. And I think what we've certainly found out over the course of the last year and a half, even after the Guptas have left our shores, to be perfectly honest, Gareth, is that there are so many other nefarious actors who've been involved in the pillaging of the state for the last decade, or perhaps even more than that. And in many cases, they don't have anything to do with the Guptas, to be perfectly honest. The Guptas had their own role to play in this whole saga. But we've seen all sorts of individuals take advantage of the weakness of the state. And I think that's really what it's been. It's been an exceptionally weak and porous state in South Africa. It really has been a state in which those in positions of power have been able to leverage those positions in order to feather their own nest. And frankly, we've seen, many of the corruption issues really happen, under the nose of the most senior politicians within South Africa with absolute impunity. Well, not just under their nose, sometimes with their very direct permission.
Well, when if you don't say anything about, corruption, and you don't speak out about corruption, and you perhaps even know that there are issues taking place, in a sense, you're also complicit to what we've seen. And I do think that, just about every single politician in South Africa who's been in some level of government and authority, certainly from the state's point of view for the last decade, bears some responsibility here. So it's a dirty, sordid story of effectively the raping and pillaging of taxpayers' money within this country over the last decade. And of course, we are now seeing the fruits of that, with a lack of resources to really use in returning this country to some semblance of growth going forward.
Pumi and I often, every week, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, Pums, but I'm sick of people using the scapegoat of Zuma and the Guptas to kind of cleanse their own very tainted spirits, because we see this happening over and over again. Of course, Jacob Zuma is doing nothing at the moment to ease any kind of lightening of the ugly picture that we all have in our heads of the sort of person that he is, and by having tea with this one and tea with that one, and by thumbing his nose at the Constitutional Court and the Commission, he's doing himself no favors. But Pumi, it strikes me as strange that someone like Brian Molefe, who I saw in front of the Commission, he doesn't seem to be contrite about any of the skullduggery that he's very pointedly been involved in. And remember, Brian Molefe was not just involved at Eskom. He's been involved in a bunch of things, and he's been involved at very deep levels. And he seems to be the man calling the shots in a lot of these situations, or at very least to have been the agent of other people who were calling the shots without questioning a damn thing. Now, he's sitting there in front of Judge Zondo, and he seems relaxed, and he seems confident, and he seems happy with himself, as if he's made some sort of contribution to the country. There's just the height.
But why would he not?
The height of a rhino on this guy.
But because there is no consequence, right? Which is, for me, unfortunately, also is about other state organs, right? It's not just about the politicians. It is also about our policing. It is also about our taxation. I think, we saw yesterday with Hamilton, as everybody, and I don't know if any of you saw that judgment, but when I read parts of that judgment, the judge was very spicy about all of the various things on his findings, right? Yes. But SARS pounced on this guy. They were just like, hey, you're like posting all of these buying 10 Lamborghinis overnight and all of that kind of stuff. So SARS comes after him because they're going, let's just see your tax returns for the past couple of years. And so they were able to bring him to some kind of accountability. But there are other people that need to be brought to accountability. There are people in that supply chain at the NHLS who are the people that approved these payments, who are the people that signed off on these payments, who are the people that sent out the notifications. Those people must also be brought to book. But nobody does that, right? So nobody does that. There's no policing, no NPA, no arrests, no. So why would Brian Molefe take any other stance than a stance that just says, yeah, so we did what we did. And anyway, don't think it's just this president. It's the other, it's not Jacob Zuma. It's Cyril Ramaphosa was also there. You know what I'm saying? Because so what? No consequences.
No consequences. You agree with that, Daniel? You think that we're a country of no consequences?
I think that there's a long way to go before our politicians really are properly accountable in South Africa. Gareth, we haven't had in South Africa a culture of accountability amongst senior politicians for decades, and perhaps
ever.
Well, perhaps even for century, Pumi. That's the point I want to make.
Think back to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Adrian Foot and Magnus Malan both went to their graves, and P.V. Botha, without ever having to account for themselves.
There are two issues. One is this lack of accountability that South Africans have lived with for decades in the new South Africa and the pre-94 era. And we've also got no tradition in South Africa where the voters themselves turn out to vote out a corrupt administration. So you've got a double trouble, a double whammy within South Africa on those two issues. And that's, one of the reasons why you find yourself in the state that you're in this country, is that there's no accountability from the law in many instances, and no accountability from the voters as well.
Except for the fact that, unfortunately, the poor voters are stuck with a devil they know, a devil they suspect, and two other parties that none of them want to touch with the barge pole. Right? That's the reality of it.
But that is why Pumi always says every week that it's up to us and we have to take control of these things wherever we can. If it means being on the school governing body so that you can see that things go right for your kids' education, if it means making sure that you pay attention to the opening of a local clinic and that you get involved there, if you can spend a bit of your time helping people grow vegetables somewhere, we've got to look to ourselves. These guys are not going to look after us.
Look, I mean, I don't think we must give up necessarily on the political process and opposition. It's not. I agree with you that opposition parties haven't covered themselves in glory in South Africa in recent years, and you often you saddled with the government simply because your opposition is even weaker or looks even weaker than the government itself. And I think to some degree, that has existed in South Africa. But the process, I think, is an open process in terms of opposition versus government in this country. It's not as though opposition is suppressed in South Africa as it is, of course, in other parts of the world. And really, I mean, this should be a time when opposition parties, and I speak broadly about opposition parties, see this as a tremendous opportunity. It's manna from heaven for our opposition parties to really take advantage of all of these the wrongdoings of the governing party, and yet they do seem largely to be able to shoot themselves in the foot on a weekly basis and let the ANC off the hook. You see this in other parts of the world as well. It's not just a South African phenomenon where opposition.
But in the past 2 weeks, we have seen two leaders of the predominant opposition parties take sides in ANC factional battles, right? So Julius Malema aligns himself with Jacob Zuma for whatever reason. I still, my mind boggles. And then on Sunday, and a couple of days ago, I saw an article by Tony Leon. On Sunday, we wake up to the biggest newspaper in the country, the biggest weekly newspaper in the country, with a bold headline that says, John Steenhuisen, the leader of the opposition, is willing to go against the Zuma faction to support Cyril Ramaphosa. And I'm going, what the hell? What the hell is going on?
I don't think that.
And I think Tony Leon is right in saying, who needs the DA?
Yeah, sorry, Pums. That's politicians being politicians. I wouldn't be surprised if behind closed doors, both Cyril and John Steenhuisen are exploring avenues for creating some kind of moderate wing of the ANC merged with the DA, because together they'd be a hell of a lot stronger than apart. And
imagine voting for the DA then, because you're voting against the ANC, and then the DA comes out to say, hey, by the way, we think this ANC president is the great guy.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But look, there are no easy answers here, right? I do want to ask you, Daniel, because a lot of what you do is to do with the economy. And we had the budget speech. It feels like ages ago, but it was just a week ago. And we've had many discussions subsequent to that already about what kind of work needs to be done on the economy. What are your findings? What do you tell international investors? What do you tell big companies? And what should we all be thinking about when it comes to the local economy, and where there are opportunities and where you should stay the hell away?
Yeah, look, Gareth, I mean, from a South African point of view, the first thing, other than put politics aside for the moment, the reality really is, in this country, you have 60 million South Africans who require goods and services. Now, yes, they're cash-strapped for sure. They're looking for value. But there is a ready market domestically in South Africa of 60 million. There's a ready market on our borders of another 200 million people to the north of us, just in terms of the SADC region itself. And there's a broader Africa out there as well. So when you're dealing with sort of the broader economic issues facing South Africa, we shouldn't just look at South Africa in isolation. There's a tremendous market of people who need to buy and use stuff, to put it simply. And clearly what we should be doing in South Africa is servicing that market. We should be, and I've said it before, and you can simplify it to the point is, we should simply be making stuff that other people want to buy. That's what we should be doing. Right. And we haven't. Our manufacturing sector in South Africa has been in decline for the last decade. What we call capacity utilization in our factories, the usage of our equipment has underperformed. We've got spare capacity in this country, and that's because of the second plank here, which is a lack of general confidence in the broader regulatory, political, state transparency environment that tends to put off domestic investors from spending domestically. So you've got a great market on the one hand, and you've got a weak state, you've got cadre deployment, you've got policy uncertainty really on the other side. It's almost like a tug of war between these two big factors. And you've got to try and find a middle ground there. And it's a big puzzle. I think that just to be positive, for a moment, I think there's a realization in South Africa, and that's what COVID has done to us, that the rubber has hit the road in terms of the ability of the state to keep on paying and paying and paying, to keep on increasing the size of the bureaucracy, to keep on wasting money on state-owned enterprises that don't perform or only perform for a connected elite. That has hit the road. And COVID has done us some sort of favor, and that's not a nice thing to say, but it has done us a favor in applying our minds to what hopefully will be some sort of turnaround. But unless the state itself is transparent and accountable, I can talk, the hind legs off a donkey, to use an old corny cliche, that accountability is at the heart of creating a better investment environment, and the regulatory regime has to go with that. So investors want to invest. The private sector wants to get more involved. They're tired of putting money into offshore investments where they haven't had fantastic returns either, I might say, but they need confidence building aspects from government. And those have been messy and ongoing issues of corruption, nothing to do with Gupta. The corruption just of the last year on the COVID, the relief monies, for example, that tends to undermine confidence on a daily basis.
Interesting point. And Pums, I'd like your comments on this too. COSATU said that the 2021 budget failed to address the root cause of South Africa's fiscal crisis. Interesting. COSATU of all people, are pointing this out. The loss of 150 billion a year in revenue due to corruption and wasteful expenditure. Of course, COSATU have a particular reason for doing this. Their strategy is to distract from the fact that they represent so many government workers who have been receiving increases every year. And COSATU know that there should be, even if there aren't, government heads on the chopping block in terms of the public wage bill. But they are pointing out something really important here. 150 billion a year in revenue is lost due to corruption and wasteful expenditure. No real surprise, but surprising that COSATU are bringing it up. Or do you think it's already clear why they're doing that?
Of course, it's clear why they're doing it. That wasteful expenditure, if you broke it down, where is the expenditure being wasted? A lot of it is in having a huge public sector wage bill that can't be rationalized, and they refuse for it to be rationalized, unfortunately. But suspect there.
Do you want to add anything to that, Daniel? How do you feel about the unions at the moment? Are they doing anything to help, or everything to make it worse?
Yeah, I mean, the problem for the unions is if, the unions are not likely to vote for their own salary adjustments downwards. They're not likely to vote for a reduction in benefits. But they are critical of government now at this very late stage when, of course, they have, enjoyed the fruits of that perhaps for the last decade or so. So, unions really have to be fair when it comes to judging government, and frankly, they haven't. But I think that there is now, part of the problem, really, Gareth, is that there's no ideological consistency within the governing ANC. There's also very little ideological consistency, frankly, amongst the unions and amongst other sort of related parties in how to fine-tune governance within the country. The ANC is all over the place on ideology. There are elements of the socialist, quasi-socialist, capitalist, statists, populists, you name it, that are all lumped together, really still very much on the liberation bandwagon. And until such a time as the governing party itself, with its trade union partners, really can perfect some sort of clear ideology, you're going to see this kind of messiness in terms of policy application. On the one hand, populism is practiced to maintain dependency in South Africa. And you see that all the time. And increasing the size of the bureaucracy in South Africa for the last 10 years has made a lot of individuals not just wealthier, but it's made a lot of individuals reliant upon the largesse of the state. And you wonder why the DA really can't make a breakthrough in South Africa, because so many people are fearful that those benefits would be removed from them if there was a sort of DA administration, to be perfectly honest.
We do hear of underhanded tactics in certain rural areas where old people are told, you know, you won't get your pension or your social welfare check if you vote anyway other than this. And we know that that happens. I mean, we've all got friends and family who live in those places who know that those are very real concerns. But the DA has their own battle, and we'll talk about them in a second. I just want to finish off with this, because when we talk about parastatals and unions and government spending, Parliament's finance watchdog is going to investigate, listen to this, they're not going to investigate the fact that Eskom might be working better, but they're going to investigate that the CEO, the new CEO, their white CEO, Andre de Ruyter, is purging black suppliers. You know, it's more concerning to them that black suppliers, who may have been doing a terrible job and not necessarily delivering services, we don't know that for a fact, but it could be true, considering Eskom's track record. It's possible that all their suppliers are crap. But they're going to be purging these black suppliers. And it's interesting that the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, SCOPA, is not worried that Eskom are starting to get their books in order, that they're starting to claim money back from municipalities, that they're starting to provide more sustainable and reliable electricity, even if it is at a higher price. Instead, they're worried that some black suppliers are losing out. This is a strange priority to have, don't you think?
Look, yeah, I think that's a diversionary tactic, clearly, from many of the other issues that are currently occurring on the state capture front, and you're starting to see the sort of fight back. We've seen a fight back amongst the sort of more populist radical economic transformation quarters on a variety of issues. I think this simply goes to that as well. But I mean, in all fairness, Gareth, I mean, you are seeing some major changes, you know, at Eskom. We have seen, you know, the broader Eskom look at a very different relationship across the board with independent power producers, bringing them into the equation. I simply think it's an RET brigade fight back on that issue. And I think, you know, again, within the ANC, there are elements who want to see that fight back expanded within the ANC. There are elements who understand that that is what it is, an RET diversionary tactic. And those differences within the ANC are precisely the factions that both the EFF and the DA want to try and pry open.
And Pumi, we know that when they talk about black suppliers, they're not talking about some small-scale guy who really needs an opportunity. We're talking about the connected political elite. We're talking about cadres who are on the take and who are upset that they're no longer on the take. I mean, if it was a small black business that could finally get the break that it deserved, we would all be in favor of that, right?
You know, Daniel alluded to the fact that what we're seeing is a lack of political unity in terms of the ideas and the ideology. You know, the party does call itself, the governing party does call itself a broader church, which kind of, you know, that's their way of saying we've got room for everybody on the pews. But the problem with that is that you then find yourself in this limbo in every direction, where you kind of, they have to, on the one side, they have to appease all of the individuals that are what we now call the RET, and they have to appease business on the other hand. They have to appease the voters and the populism that they choose to stand on. The hill they choose to die on is one where the most popular concepts are the ones that they then use as the thing that they're going to spend all of their energy and time on, because that's what the people want to hear about. So people don't want to hear that there's a purging of black suppliers, no matter who those black suppliers are, whether they're small or big or whatever, because that then plays into an ideology that says there is no redistribution of wealth in South Africa, because here are these few black suppliers that were making it and now they are being thrown out in favor of whom? in favor of the old white regime. White regime is what they say. And unfortunately, populist politics.
And that narrative sticks. That narrative sticks. People like that narrative. I just want to clear up for anybody who's frustrated, because I often will listen to, and this is no criticism of the two of you, but I'll listen to people who are analyzing a situation. They'll talk about things like RET. We're talking radical economic transformation when we say that. They don't often explain the acronyms, and you two were both talking about it like university professors there. Some of us are going,
excuse me.
I'm sure I mentioned the full name, Gareth, but I want to just come in on this point, which is an important point. Yes, I think the ANC has succeeded in delivering to all of these constituent elements and keeping them within the fold. And I think that's part of the ANC's ongoing electoral success. What we saw in the budget last week, and it is an important point to make, is that indeed it does seem as though Mr. Mboweni has taken the view that the state cannot simply be the piggy bank for absolutely everyone. And on the basis of that, that budget that we saw last week is predicated upon a smaller state expenditure bill, and in the very serious and direct issue of salary adjustments for civil servants. That is a direct threat, in a sense, to the power of the unions within the ANC. If he can get that right, the budget figures look better. If he can't get that right, we go into a period in 2 or 3 years' time where that debt to GDP ratio for South Africa simply continues on an upward trajectory rather on a downwards trajectory. So there was an important, I think, admission from the state that the status quo simply cannot continue. The question is, will the ANC's constituent elements buy into what is a very serious position now in terms of our debt position and the cost of our debt, particularly in South Africa? Or will they take a different view, which means some sort of balkanization or real fragmentation from the ANC mothership? And I think that is going to play itself out in South Africa over the next few months, into the next year or two. These pressures on the ANC are now very, very real. The coffers are largely empty. There's only so much you can milk the middle classes in South Africa, or even the poor in South Africa, through indirect taxes. And I think the rubber has hit the road on that.
All right. So,
and this is the crevice that the opposition parties should really be prying into, rather than aligning themselves with either faction. Yeah. I think they should realize that the party, I think the ANC is mortally wounded. Really it is. And the time is now to take advantage of that and deliver policies that can make a difference to many South Africans, instead of just kind of going. And I think, unfortunately, our opposition parties have resigned themselves to the fact that the ANC wins and always wins with this large majority, because and so they're just aligning themselves.
Let's talk about the
lesser devil.
Let's do a little whip round of the opposition parties, because I think that there have been opportunities lost during this pandemic, and I've got to say that John Steenhuisen has succeeded, at least in one or two respects. First of all, by stopping Helen Zille from tweeting all the time about nonsense, because she's certainly, been relegated to being, slightly an outsider pissing in, if you don't mind the tent analogy, rather than an insider pissing out. So he's managed to also get the DA's messaging more or less, in terms of everybody being on board, more or less cogent, which it wasn't for the longest time. And we all know that the DA was speaking with forked tongue on a number of different things. So I think he deserves a little bit of credit there. He certainly seems to be in the mold of and I don't want to insult either Tony Blair or him, but he seems to be doing things in more or less the mold of a new Labour Tony Blair there. And I think it's largely working for them. They've also been very outspoken about the pandemic. And I think they've won over a few people by saying to government, here it is. They've taken them to court in a number of cases as well, and said, we'll be party to bringing you to heel on things that just don't make sense. The EFF, while they've distracted us with shampoo and Brackenfell High School, have been shown to have been probably on the back foot more than anything else during this pandemic. And the IFP have just totally disappeared from the political scenario. I can't help thinking it's because Mangosuthu Buthelezi is now so old that he really can't be at the helm there anymore. Do you think that's a fair appraisal, or do you think that I've left out some stuff?
Well, I think from the DA's perspective, I would certainly agree that in the first 6 to 9 months of the pandemic, so for most of last year, Mr. Steenhuisen, before he was formally elected, was very effective at putting across a message of being an alternative leader. And he used social media very effectively to address the nation on a number of occasions, looking very presidential. Not quite sure why that hasn't continued, because that really is the way to go in South Africa, to use social media very effectively. Many South Africans don't watch parliamentary debates. They don't concentrate. They tend to switch off when it comes to the formalized political environment. But putting yourself forward as an alternative and using social media to create a buzz about an address on a monthly basis. I mean, every time that President Ramaphosa speaks to the nation, immediately afterwards, Mr. Steenhuisen should be on a webcast giving his alternative address to the nation every time. It was done last year.
If he is, we don't know about it. So
he does do it, but it's not effectively communicated even through the social media platforms. So I think they did well last year, but the problem is, Gareth, the proof is in the pudding, and the pudding is amongst the electorate and the voters. And the DA hasn't specifically been able to increase its voter share that substantially in the recent by-elections that were held, 90 odd of them held in November, December of last year. It was almost a mini election. And in fact, the DA battled to retain its voter share. So something is not quite right in the messaging of the party. And this confusion about looking towards some sort of cooperative agreement, and it's not about a coalition here. In all fairness to Mr. Steenhuisen, he didn't mention the C word. He, broadly speaking, looked at a cooperative alliance with elements within the ANC. Nothing new in that. I think the press tended to blow that out of proportion, and all the rest of us perhaps as well. But it's confusion. It messes up the distinct message of the DA, and it doesn't really help the DA in identifying a niche for itself. So there are issues with that. On the issue of the EFF, yes, I mean, the more authoritarian approach of managing COVID-19, the Command Council, for example, takes away some of the Command Council ideology from the EFF. The rules and regulations, the centralization of power that the ANC has seen in the last year or so takes away the luster from the EFF, and they haven't been able really to make a mark other than some of the social campaigns that you've correctly outlined. So both the opposition parties have been stunted in their ability to really take on the ANC over this period. And of course, Gareth, the point to remember here is that no matter what we say about the ANC, if there is, and it's a big if there is an efficient vaccine rollout program in the next 6 to 9 months, the person who will get the credit for that will be President Ramaphosa. His redemption, in effect, is a good vaccine rollout program. If it runs into a snail pace and our vaccines expire before they are due to be administered, then I think, and there's corruption, then I think he could be in trouble. So he's a bit like a Teflon president, our president.
We have already had those. I do want to caution you that we've already had those. What would we call them? Pitfalls. They've already occurred before the vaccine had arrived, and shortly after the AstraZeneca one did. It wasn't an enthusiastic rallying for Cyril Ramaphosa. He's going to have to do much better than this.
No, look, there's a second chance. There's a second chance here that he has. And that second chance, of course, President always effectively has a second chance, especially on an issue like this, which is a critical issue for South Africa. And he has the chance to redeem himself from some of the broader macro issues of critique that we've mentioned.
I get the feeling.
Cyril Ramaphosa's head was sorry, Gareth.
Pumi's laughing because she doesn't necessarily agree.
Listen here, Cyril Ramaphosa's had more second chances than a cat has lives. So I don't know about that guy. But I do want to just picking up on what Daniel's talking about with the opposition parties. And here I have to revert to type being a communications person. The opposition parties fall flat when it comes to what they are communicating, not so much how often or when or where they are communicating. I don't think anybody can tell you with the relative confidence what it is that the DA actually stands for, what the DA stands for, what are their top 3 priorities, what are the 3 things that they will deliver if ever, in the ever unlikely event that John Steenhuisen gets voted in to be the president. What are the 3 things that they will do for South Africans? No one can tell you what that is. Neither can anybody tell you about the EFF. And I think, unfortunately, why the EFF has plateaued is because they've morphed into a cult of Julius Malema. So the EFF is going to be like UDM. 20 years from now, they will still have their CIC as Julius Malema, and there's no succession plan in place, which is what happened to the IFP. There was no succession plan in place. So with Mangosuthu aging as he has, nobody can see who the leader of that party is going to be. Who's the next person that's going to take the party forward, and what does the party stand for? That's unfortunately where all the opposition parties are stuck in that space where nobody knows what they stand for or what they can do or what they will do if they are ever voted into power, other than the fact that they have a lot to say against the ANC. They have none of their own stuff to say. It's just against the ANC. It's against Jacob Zuma. It's against corruption.
Yeah. But for me, what does the ANC stand for? I mean, you could leverage, the same argument really as what are its top 3 priorities? And we could, if you're cynical, you'll say one of the top 3 priorities is serving the interests of the connected elites within the ANC. But there are top 3. What are the top 3? What are the top 3 priorities for the DA? And the problem with the problem for the DA is that one of its top priorities would be a smaller state. And a smaller state means less dependency on the state for individuals within South Africa. And that's a threat to many voters out there. It really is. And that's a real issue that the DA has to overcome.
Yeah.
And this is exactly, when you say what are the priorities for the ANC, what the ANC in the past has been able to do very well is they've been able to leverage we are the party of liberation. We are a party that can deliver a better life for all. And then what they did for the 2 elections after that is they kept hammering on the fact that they had a good story to tell. They have a good story to tell. We have got this. This is what we've built. These are the number of houses. And that is what has carried them. Where they are weak today is they actually have no salient message because they are busy with infighting. So they're not working together to be out there selling the party. They are busy with infighting, and that's why it's an advantage to any opposition party. A new party could take advantage of that because they are not. Their eye is off the ball.
Yeah, let me just, I think in relation to what you're saying, I think what we will see in South Africa is a fragmentation of the South African voters' vote, a fragmentation. And I agree with you entirely. There is room in the spectrum for new political entrants, given that the existing ones are not fulfilling ideally.
Sorry, you just said the word spectrum, and Stella and Benny Abrams just had an apoplexy.
But I always like that word spectrum. There is room for new political players. The problem is that we are likely to see a fragmentation of the opposition vote as well. There may be an increasing fragmentation of the ANC vote, but it's going to go to a variety of different sources in the opposition. So we're going to see special interest groups. We're going to see local interest groups gain traction in local government elections, and we're going to see more complex coalitions emerge, particularly at local government level, in the next 9 months or so. Now, nothing wrong with that. I like coalitions, bring people together. It's a check and balance as well within the process. But I do think that's where South African politics is going. And perhaps that's a positive when you look at this. One political party is not going to have a monopoly of taking votes away from the ANC. It may be a number of different parties.
I think that we're going to be surprised in the next couple of years. There is a seismic shift coming in the political arena of South Africa. And I think it's not going to look the way a lot of people think that it's going to look.
Well, what do you think it's going to look like? That's an interesting proposition.
I think that there is going to be a groundswell of a new political force, new ideology, because there are, with 26 years in, which is where the ANC is, which is also around the time, 20 to 30 years is around the time where liberation movements around the world lose their support.
Yeah, they're overripe.
They're at that point. And this is where the opportunity, and Daniel, you'll bear me out on this, there's a huge move to a more digitalized experience and a more connected way of speaking to the electorate, which none of the parties are currently taking advantage of. And I think that we're going to see it happen. We're going to see it rise in the next couple of years. We've got 36 months to go before the next general election. A lot can happen in 36 months.
For me, actually, I do agree with you. And I think the digitized aspect of campaigning and message presentation is going to be critical. And it's interesting because if you look at the ANC today, its core support base really is not coming out of the connected urban areas. Its core support base today is more rurally based. And you've seen the ANC already struggle when it comes to retaining their majorities in the big urban metros in South Africa. So it's that rural, poorer voter who is still largely in favor of the ANC, but that urban voter certainly, I think, will be looking for fresh alternatives. The issue still goes back to whether there'll be whether there's a single political party who can really tap into those disaffected former ANC voters.
It's not former ANC voters that they have to get.
Those voters that don't bother to turn out to vote. There's this huge voting number who have become alienated or lazy or disinterested in the political system or just generally irritated with everything. They stay at home. Now, Mr. Mashaba's party now clearly is trying to target the 9 or 10 million South Africans who just don't bother going to the polls. If you can get that messaging right, then you can really have a launch pad for something bigger.
What is the messaging that is going to resonate? Because we always talk about these disaffected people who've given up on the political process, but nobody seems to be able to find, like Donald Trump did. I mean, I didn't want to bring him up because he hasn't been in the burning platform for a while, but Donald Trump didn't appeal to traditional Republicans. He didn't appeal to angry Democrats who were sick of the Democratic Party. Instead, he built his own new, what would you call it, consensus of disaffected, grumbling, disenfranchised, excluded middle Americans. Now,
broke the GOP.
We have that same constituency in South Africa, and those people are not being appealed to. So who's going to do it, and what is the messaging that we need to deploy?
You know what it's like, Gareth? It's to bring us back to the very beginning of this show. It's like that George Foreman grill, right? It's about finding that basic need that appeals to most South Africans, and answering that. It's like coming up with an Arnold Palmer. You've just got to quench the thirst of the South African voter. That's it. It's the same thing.
Yeah, from your mouth to God's ears. We're almost out of time. Daniel, is there any stuff internationally that you're paying very close attention to at the moment? And Pumi, are there any international stories that have caught your eye?
Gareth, look, I think from an international perspective, we are always a little behind the curve in South Africa. We're watching the big vaccine rollout programs in other parts of the world, and I think in some cases, perhaps quite enviously, where it's working. There are areas where it hasn't worked particularly efficiently, but we are going to be under pressure in South Africa politically as well if this vaccine rollout goes too slowly or is fraught with logistical issues. We'll see the rest of the world vaccinated. We'll see other African states vaccinated as well. And I think the pressure is therefore on, just because there's a competitive edge to the world and even to our own continent, and that's just from the vaccination program. So we shouldn't underestimate the psychological effect on South Africans watching other people get the jab quite efficiently. And the second issue, obviously, that I tend to watch is the global recovery from COVID-19. Can it benefit us? Yes, it can. If we had an efficient regulatory regime in South Africa, we could see many more manufacturing jobs return to South Africa as companies look to localize rather than globalize their productive capacity. I would hope that government really understands that, because it's still a job creator. You can talk about the digital age, yeah, but we need a large number of lower paid manufacturing jobs, almost still in the old economy in South Africa, at least as a bridge until we get a new economy structured in this country. And I think there's some way to go there, but there's tremendous opportunity if you really embrace the changes that are occurring in the world, partially as a result of COVID.
I'd like to give credit to Thabiso on this, because Thabiso sent this question, and he'd love to hear our opinions on the connection between a lack of political will and the downturn in manufacturing, which you've just spoken about now, Daniel. Thabiso says, for instance, it makes no sense that we're not developing our own vaccines or cars for that matter. I mean, look at Mahindra, Kia, etc. We do have great pharmaceutical companies in this country, on that note, and we probably don't have the research and development budgets that they do in big pharma overseas, but we've got substantial players in the market, and we do in many other sectors of our economy. Of course, government's not going to give them the upper hand, because government sees them as evil capitalist corporations that are trying to screw the worker out of a job. So the whole ideology is a bit messed up there. But do you agree, Phumi, like manufacturing, let's take that back, produce things the world wants?
That's in fact, that's what the whole world needs, more kind of production of things, as Daniel was saying earlier. There is no reason why we do not have a thriving manufacturing of minibus taxis, like people movers. Inyati and Iveco and all of those people have come in. We buy more taxis. We have more taxis on the road than any other country in the world. Right. Why are we not manufacturing our own? Why are we not manufacturing our own? Textiles. We used to have an incredibly strong textile industry down in the Cape. That has all been shut simply because we've allowed foreign foreigners like China to be able to dump their wares here.
Are we talking,
and the textiles industry
protectionism here? Is that what we're saying?
And the textile industry, Gareth, the textile industry all over the world has grown, and we had the capacity here. We could have manufactured those textiles much cheaper than anywhere else in the world, and we shut down that entire industry. So, I mean, it is political will. Unfortunately, our politicians are expedient with a lot of decisions that they make, and don't have a lot of long-term thinking, kind of the push and pull. We talk about that the budget is only going to work if Tito Mboweni and his compatriots can make it work. But in order to make it work, they have to be willing to sacrifice some of the relationships that they have. They have to be willing to let go of their COSATU affiliations. They have to be willing to let those things go for the long-term vision in order to deliver on what they need to deliver on. But there's no political will and no leadership. No leadership in that party, unfortunately. Even though he gets second chances, Cyril Ramaphosa is a weak president.
Do you have any comments on those quite damning remarks from Phumi?
There's a great Chinese company, as it happens, that manufactures television sets and white goods here in the Western Cape called Hisense. A great factory. Those goods go out to us here and other parts of the African continent as well. It's one factory. We should have a massive industry like that within the country, within our country. The consumer market across this continent is enormous. Populations are growing, and growth rates across many parts of Africa are going to resume a relatively favorable path once we get through COVID, and probably quite rapidly. So the potential is there within this country. So I've no doubt about that. I'm quite positive when it comes to that. But I do agree here. Your broader political environment, your broader accountability, transparency environment for government has to be 100%. You cannot operate in a milieu, to use another fine word, Gareth, a milieu of confusion and protection of your own buddies. You cannot operate within that environment. And that will just stymie every aspect of growth. So, I think, Ramaphosa himself, he's got the potential certainly to really leverage many of the non-ANC groupings within South Africa. Certainly the private sector, who will give him every single chance, more than the 9 lives of a cat, he will get from the private sector within South Africa.
I must warn you, Phumi and I do not share your excitement and optimism with respect to
optimism for that man.
Any political capital that he has left. I think he has squandered so many opportunities along the way. Most of all, COVID. You know, there was a rallying cry that the president could have put out at that point. He could have taken advantage of COVID to exact some pretty serious damage on his enemies within his party and without. And instead, he sat there like a jelly baby.
You know, you would.
The issue.
Go ahead, Daniel.
The issue of the president is one of the potential of the president. I agree with you absolutely that there has been vacillation and weakness over the last number of years that has partially also been instrumental in the weak position of South Africa broadly. And may I just say also, and I'm going to be critical of the president as well, when it comes to looking at the issues relating to Eskom, the president himself has had 12, 13, 14 years to look at issues of energy security in South Africa and really hasn't been able to lead on that particular issue. So I'm the first to be able to also criticize him. But the reality is he's the president of South Africa. The reality is, certainly for me, is that there is still, and certainly within the private sector that I work in, a tremendous amount of goodwill towards him personally, and also a belief, you may say it's a false belief, but a belief that he stands for more business-friendly economic policy proposals going forward. It goes back.
Someone should send him the memo.
It goes back to the same old story. Do you believe that, or do you or do you believe he's an ANC cadre just to promote the friends and buddies? And you can take your view on that. My own view is
someone should send him the memo that says he's the president of this country. Someone should send him that memo. Maybe he's forgotten.
Well, you know the makeup of the ANC just as well as I do. You know that he's been saddled with an unenviable task of dragging this.
No one held a gun.
Liberation movement.
No one. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sympathetic anymore. There was a time where I was like, go Cyril, and we need you more than we need these crooks. But I'm afraid he's.
When Oliver Tambo was the president of that party, he held that animal by the scruff of its neck from London, no less, all over the world. He was able to hold that ship steady. When Nelson Mandela was the president of that country, he was able to hold the ship steady. He was able to hold the ship steady. When Thabo Mbeki was the president of that party, he was able, good or bad, he was able to wrangle that animal the way that he wanted to wrangle that animal. And for all intents and purposes, if we listen to what the State Commission is telling us, Jacob Zuma, when he was the president of that party, was able to wield that party in the way that he wanted to wield the party. What is wrong with Cyril Ramaphosa that he cannot do the same for his party? He's the leader of the party, he's the leader of this country, and he is unable to wrangle the animal and make it heal to what he needs it to do. I'm sorry.
No, you're not going to find a sympathetic audience here.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with both of you on this issue. All I'm saying is that the realpolitik of South Africa is that the ANC remains in power with a very healthy majority, and it doesn't look as though its electoral base is moving away from it in any great number yet. To your point, Phumi, because it may well do so, but it doesn't look like that yet. So we can criticize the president all we want to, and we can find fault, and absolutely, and I agree with both of you on this issue. But the reality for me is that you're going to have to work with an ANC for some time to come within this country. You're going to have to, whether you like it or not. And
you don't have to get the ANC electorate to vote away from the ANC. I think the last count stats say there's something like 25 million South Africans of voting age. The ANC won an outright majority with 11 million votes.
And we've spoken about those voters who don't vote at all, and their potential to turn out for different political parties. And I agree that adds a fluidity to our political system that we haven't had recently. but as yet it hasn't been translated into reality. I mean, we are talking really, in theory, so to speak. Now, if you have a change in August, September, when we have local government elections, you have this fragmentation of the ANC vote even further, then I think you usher in a new era for South Africa with a competitive political system. And I'm the first to be a proponent of a real competitive political system. The ANC will only listen to reason if it fears being turfed out of office. That's the only issue that really is going to get the ANC on its toes. And I think it will fragment when it is under that pressure as well.
Their time is up. I think they are already on notice.
All right, Phumi, Daniel, thank you so very much, both of you. There's been some nice discussion, some nice debate. I appreciate both of your points of view. It's always good to have interested and interesting people handling the affairs of state and the affairs
Guys,
most interested.
We didn't even talk about Sarkozy and if he's going to prison. But anyway, that's another topic for another day.
For next week. And Phumi, we still have to talk about the crazy Helen Zille's conspiracy theory about the microchips in her brain. We'll get that next week too.
She might not be on Twitter, but she's active on that Facebook. Ooh.
Oh, is that where it's gone? All right. Well,
bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a happy day. This is cliffcentral.com, and thank you for being part of the show this morning. We will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early at the same time. That's 6 a.m. Stick around.